Okay, so this is the next part. So I have done my 5 rounds of my toe. So I'm going to change colour to the stripe of white now. As I said, if you are just using one yarn or one colour, you just keep going. But if you want to change colour for contrast toes, this is where I change my toe. So this is where I'm going to do my colour change. If you're doing a colour change where you're going to be switching back and forth, sometimes it can kind of jog, where you have kind of one half of the stitch in one colour and one half of the stitch in the other. So this should hopefully stop that happening to do it this way. But if you're just going to change it just the first time, just for contrast, you don't need to do it this way. You can just get your new colour and just place it over like that, and just knit as you would usually. If you want to kind of secure it in a little bit better and you're just changing, you can pick up your new colour and your old colour at the same time, and you just knit kind of the first 5 or so stitches with 2 colours, treating both loops as just one. So you would just knit kind of over like that, treat them as one, and then after kind of 5 stitches it's pretty well woven in, and then you just switch to just using one. But I'm going to do stripes, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my old colour, which is my blue, on top of my white like this. Then I'm going to knit 1 round of my white, just making sure that blue is over the top and I've got the right end, because obviously need to knit with the new end. It's a bit tricky for the very first round, but once you've done the first one they kind of anchor in. So I'm just going to knit all the way around with this white now, and if it gets a bit loose with your first one, just pull tight so it doesn't get too loose. You kind of want to leave a few inches of the end so you can weave it in afterwards. So I'm just knitting my last stitch. So that's the first round done. Again, if it gets loose, just pull the old one. And then for your second round, you want to make sure that your old colour, which is still this blue, is again over the top of your white, so the white is underneath it, and you skip your first stitch. So this marked stitch here isn't actually going to get knit, we're going to knit this one, so we're just going to put the white behind that pink one there and skip it and knit from the second peg onwards, just pulling these nice and tight so that you get a nice clean transition. So we're going to just knit all the way around again. Just finishing up my second round. So it's only for the first 2 rounds that you do the funny skip and move over. So I'm doing 3 rounds of my white. So that's my second round done. And now, again, just making sure that the blue is over to keep it nice and taut. I'm just going to knit every peg for this round. Make sure you're pulling it to keep the loops in, and knit all the way around again. Now I'm changing back to my blue, so I need to make sure my white, which is my old colour now, is over my blue. And now I'm knitting every stitch in the blue, making sure to pull the old colour nice and tightly. And I'm going to knit round. So I'm just finishing up my first round, and then again for your second round, so it's always the second round. You skip that first starter peg, so you just make sure that your white yarn, in this case, so your old yarn that you're not knitting with, is over the new, so you can see it crosses. Skip your first peg, go behind it, and then knit for your second one, and then all your subsequent rounds in the same colour, you just knit every peg until your stripe is as big as you want it to be. So I'm just going to keep doing this, and then I will come back when we've knit enough, or when I've knit enough to close up the toe, so you can see how to do that. Okay, so I have done 24 rows and my toe is now sticking out enough that I can close up the Kitchener. So I'm going to show you how to do that. The way to judge whether or not your toe is long enough is if you turn your loom over, if you kind of squeeze these strands together, it should be able to touch without looking super stretched out of shape. And you need to do this so that you can measure to find out what kind of length you need for your foot. So to close up your Kitchener, you want to make sure that your starting tail is on your left hand side if you're using your right hand, and you'll need your loom hook to start. So what you do is you find your first loop that you made and you pull it up, and you'll want to keep your finger underneath these threads while you do this to try and keep them out the way. So you pull this up, and then once that's as high as you can get it, you then pull the next one. I always pull the first one up just in case there's one that I can't see and I've missed. If you pull the first one up, then you can double check, and then you just go along from right to left and you pull the loops up as high as you can go. I start with my loom hook and then I switch to using my fingers, and you just pull every loop all the way along. As you get towards the other end, you might want to put your loom hook underneath the loops, because it can be kind of easy to muddle them up if you are in a point which is quite small. So you can see my loop is getting really long already, and this is where the excess of yarn is coming in, but you can also see how neatly it is closing up the toe. So here you can see where it's closing. The stitches are ever so slightly smaller, which you can kind of pull to make that kind of fit a little bit nicer. But you can see that that is much smaller. So I'm just gonna keep pulling as I go along. So I've just got the last couple of loops to pull. So you can see I've got them on my hook to make sure I don't drop them. Just keep pulling until you're out of loops, and then pull your loose end. Super simple. And there is your closed up toe. Here you can see that slight depression where that seam is. You can just kind of pull it a little bit, kind of smush it out. That will make it more seamless. So now there you can see the stripes coming through. You can see how they look really neat. Now you can measure your foot. So again, if my hand was my foot, you just put your foot in, and if my wrist is my ankle, where I want my heel to be, I would just measure to about here and put it in. When I say measure to here, I mean the loops on your loom. Another way to measure is basically when the pegs are almost touching your ankle, so kind of half a centimetre away, that's a good point to put your heel in. But at the end of the day, they're just socks and they're stretchy. And my first pair were a little bit short, but they work just fine as short socks. For me, as a size 8, I do 72 rows before I do my heel, but that's going to depend a little bit on your tension and how big your feet are. But just to show you close up with those yarn overs, where you wrap the old colour over the new colour for the first 2 rows and then knit as normal, it gives this tiny little mark, but it's really neat, you won't feel it, and it's super simple. So keep going until your foot is long enough, and then I will do another video showing you how to do the heel.